Welcome to the Right Club podcast, where the focus is on helping you, the real estate investor, advance to the next level. And now let's join this week's hosts and share ways for you to customize your life.
What's the smallest lot that you can actually have a laneway house or suite on? Because I guess it depends on the municipality and all the rest of it, but there's got to be some, even building code, I think would have some implications on that, right?
That's right. There's no minimum size in the eyes of the zoning bylaw, but the building code does have minimum areas, which I think is like a 300 square foot unit, something like that. So they're technically possible at almost any scale. They're usually most feasible when you can have, call it 600 square feet or bigger, but it's dependent on site, dependent on neighborhood, dependent on a lot of things. The important thing to note is that they can be almost any size.
Okay, they can be, and also the lot. There are a lot of considerations about the lot, right? Whether it's what's it called, a
That's
flat
right.
lot? Am I saying the right term? A flagpole lot that there's a lot of square footage or whatever in the back. Where you could put something in and maybe stuff along the side. So I have a question for you about that. In Toronto, especially the older parts, you see a lot of these houses that built that have the service laneway in between at the back, right? Are those so their backyards might be, I don't know, fairly reasonably sized. These are probably in the older neighborhoods, I would think. Are you seeing a lot of development in those kinds of places?
Yes, and that's mostly because the laneway suite policy now works in concert with the garden suite policy. So obviously laneway suites have to be on laneways, pretty straightforward. You need a publicly designated laneway at the rear of your property. Garden suites are designed to go on any lot. Basically, they apply to any lot that doesn't have a public laneway abutting the side or the back. So now in Toronto, any property can have a secondary suite in the backyard. It's just a matter of which zoning policy you fall under. And as a result of that, we're seeing projects in the periphery like Scarborough, North York, Etobicoke are all eligible for rear yard suites. Even downtown Toronto on tighter lots, really any circumstance now, we can accommodate an ADU.
Wow. Are you seeing a real uptick in requests for proposals for these units?
We did for a while until the rate hikes hit earlier this year.
Yes.
And now we've seen a bit of a slowdown, but compared to most other typologies, it's going strong. And that's partly because not only does it work for investors, it also works for families, that accommodating a loved one scenario or the home office scenario, that's still strong for people that want that for personal use. So it touches on enough different use cases that it's been pretty resilient to changes in the market.
Interesting. It never occurred to me that you could have an office back in it, but why not? Of course, because people have offices in their homes all the time. And I could even see a market for if you have the space on your lot and you could put in a nice unit, you could rent it to a professional. They have depending on the zoning, I guess, but you could have an office in part of the structure and that person can live or family can live in the other part.
Absolutely. They have a broad appeal in an area that used to be a gap in our rental market. So when times are good, they'll take people that were looking at a condo and move them up into more of a house typology, and vice versa. When times are bad, people who don't want to rent a house anymore can rent a laneway suite, still be in a detached family unit without having to go all the way to a condo tower.
Okay. All right. And as we know, all parts of the country are growing in terms of population. So it's not like we're running out of people to live in places. We're just running out of places for people to live in.
You're absolutely right. And ironically, our neighborhoods in Toronto previously had declining populations, just because the way demographics have been changing compared to historical uses of houses. We have fewer people living in more square footage than ever before. So these are actually only stabilizing the population of our neighborhoods, not even increasing them at this point. So we've had fewer and fewer people living in this typology, making it harder and harder to get, which is why house prices have been going up, or at least part of the reason. So it's doing a good job of finding the missing middle, which is the point of all of this.
Right. Okay. So just let me, I make sure that I understand that. So fewer people are living in the current structures that are there. I got
That's
that
right.
Okay. Okay. So the housing is there. We just have fewer people living in it. Whereas before there might have been, I don't know, 4 or 5 people, maybe the kids left or whatever it is. Now we've got an empty nest syndrome, and now mom and dad are there, and maybe one of them dies or leaves for whatever reason. And we've just got one person living in a house that used to house, I don't know, 4 or 5, 6 people.
That's right. It's kind of reinvigorating the multi-generational or the multi-tenant living scenarios, but keeping people in separate structures. So the dignity, the privacy, the benefits of living in a low-rise neighborhood are remaining strong, but you're putting 2 families on one lot, or 2 separate roommate groups on one lot. It's just increasing flexibility in neighborhoods.
Right. And using the land to the best of, to its best use, right?
Exactly. And infrastructure, because we have more efficient plumbing fixtures and fewer people, like we can absolutely support additional housing units in the yellow belt, like the residential areas of Toronto. So between these and multiplexes, it's starting to turn the tide a little bit.
Okay, so talk a little bit about multiplexes then, and sort of other types of neighborhood intensification that you work on, because I think this is really, really interesting, especially in the older cities like Toronto and Montreal and Vancouver and probably Winnipeg. I mean, we're talking about Toronto specifically right here, but there's a lot of older cities who the cores, I guess we should say, the inner cores are older. And that's where a lot of the work is done. So what other things are you working on then?
Well, Toronto has become a real leader when it comes to multi-unit housing. Just a couple of weeks ago, they passed a bylaw that means every property in Toronto is eligible for 4 units, which previously a lot of our neighborhood areas were limited to 1 unit per house, 2 units per house. So this has made it a lot easier to build multi-unit houses in the main structure, and it's toothing in well with the Laneway and Garden Suite policies. So as of a couple of weeks ago, I can design people a fully as of right development charge free 4-plex and Laneway or Garden Suite. So I can take a single family home lot, bring it up to 5 units, which is eligible for commercial financing, and do it without going to committee of adjustment.
Thanks for listening to the Right Club podcast, where the focus is on helping all levels of real estate investors advance to the next level and help you customize your life. Be sure to tune in next week at rightclub.com/podcast or wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you get a few seconds, please rate the podcast wherever you're listening. It helps the show get noticed by others like you, and we truly appreciate it. And don't forget to subscribe.